Welcome to the Scott and Holm podcast, where I, Sam, who I rarely introduce myself here at the top of the show. I feel like I introduced you guys, my co-hosts. I never introduced myself. Quite literally, guys, since the start of this podcast, which dating back to the 2015-2016 U of H athletic season, I would go so far, guys, as to say since the three of us, which I would say roughly around 2006, 2007, all I think really became well and truly U of H fans. I would say the Houston Cougar weekend that slash week that we just experienced might go down as the most like successful regular season week that we've all experienced. I think I try to praise the topics at hand because one, I want you to listen to the show. I don't want to be like, yeah, it wasn't really a great podcast. I don't feel the need to tune in further. But I think also because like genuinely there always are really exciting things to talk about within this athletic department, fall, winter, or spring. But Dustin, what a weekend it was.
Yeah, pretty remarkable. You mentioned right before we started recording that you're gonna make the top weekend argument, and I can't say that I spent a lot of time researching other weekends, but it's hard to imagine
Mhm.
what other combination of regular season Cougar sporting events we could have had in a single weekend that rivals the one we just had. So that I think speaks to how much fun we all had as Cougar fans this past weekend, and how much fun this podcast I'm sure is going to be.
Bobby, how you doing, friend?
Man, I'm great. We just said all that, and really, like Dustin, I didn't really research it, but you think about it, and you're like, I can't really think of one that's better. Guys, one of the bat and ball sports, not the spoiler alert here, literally lost the series, and we are pumped about it. That was the kind of weekend it was. So again, not to spoil anything, but we're excited that we went one of three in a particular sport.
If you didn't know how the softball team did this weekend, we have a heck of a fun story for you here in like 30 or 40-ish minutes once you get through the topics at the top, right, gents?
Yes, sir.
Dang it, I didn't know what happened. I was waiting for you guys to tell me what happened with softball. Guys really just spoiled that for me up front. But let's keep
Well,
going.
30,
No,
40 minutes, you'll find out.
we just told you there's something good. We left the dramatic I guess effect to
I
what
didn't even
actually
say
happened
softball.
later.
I said a bat and ball sport.
That's fair. I'm the one that spoiled the softball. Guys, before we get staying off the rails, want to shout out our new partners, our good friends at Autograph. Please, if you haven't done so already, go to link.ag.fan/shpawd. If you don't want to remember that URL, totally fine. I'll put the SH Podcast URL at the top of this episode description. The best place to follow your Houston Cougars, everything going on content wise out there, and just by doing what you already do, consuming Cougar content, including this podcast, along with the other written stuff and great creators out there, you get yourself in a better position to win fantastic prizes as well. Really clean setup. Really excited to have them as part of our podcast family here. So please, 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 if you haven't done so already, download Autograph with the link in the show description. I will repeat it one more time for you. That's link.ag.fan/shpawd, like SH Podcast. Of course, gotta mention our friends at Charlie Hustle. Guys, in a cruel twist of irony, even though I couldn't be more excited to have my Charlie Hustle jacket. My Charlie Hustle jacket got to Las Vegas literally 7 hours after I landed in the great state of Texas for my little weekend sojourn to see you, Dustin, see my family and friends, and also see some fantastic Houston Cougar sports. But guys, I couldn't be a happier camper. It is so cool. You got the white kind of satin feel. You got the skinny U of H on the sleeve there. Really exciting stuff. I think we'd waited a good long while. And to be their credit, Charlie Hustle, I think very much made it clear to us, like, hey, it's coming. Don't worry. Because they had some fantastic jacket releases where I was just like, oh, like I think there was an Iowa State one about a month or two ago where I think, as discussed, I think Bill Fenley, their coach, actually wore it before one of their games. And I was just like, I would kill for something that he was in like a U of H equivalent. And yeah, Charlie Hustle, good friends, sponsors, knocked it out of the park. CharlieHustle.com for a fantastic collection. Not just this awesome jacket, but shirts, crew necks, hoodies, great vintage Cougar designs, look good, feel good, and please, please, please feel even better by using our promo code SHP15. That SHP15 promo code at checkout will save you 15% off your Charlie Hustle order. Fantastic Cougar collection, fantastic Big 12 selection. Generally, I think it's really cool. They're hosting a bunch of alumni associations, including your University of Houston Alumni Association, before the Big 12 tournament there in Kansas City, their home, and official Big 12 partners, which became official earlier this season, which I think is really cool. Allows them to do well, stuff like the pre-Big 12 tournament stuff in Kansas City. So support our friends, charliehustle.com, promo code SHP15, all that stuff. Guys, I kind of felt like as much as the team that we're about to talk about had an absolutely monumental weekend to cap off a monumental regular season, there's at least one sport where I'm just like, man, I hate that they're not getting first billing because of what they did. But I think we have to start with Cougar men's basketball, Bobby, who got a couple of really big wins, including an emphatic, I think, exclamation point to their regular season.
Yeah, just an exciting week of Cougar basketball, right? Coog started with a trip to Orlando to visit the University of Central Florida Golden Knights. That is their name. I will refer to that.
I was going to interrupt you
forever.
if you referred to them as UCF Knights.
Nope,
Bob, you
nope, that's not what their name is. This was a really interesting game. This was a game that kind of felt weird. Sam and I had kind of talked about the fact that this game kind of felt not like a trap game. I didn't want to call it a trap game, but definitely a game where UCF kind of a road trip where UCF has been kind of tough at home. They've looked good at various times. So just an interesting game. And then you started it off, and the Cougs actually trailed at the end of the first half, 31-28, shot just 19% from beyond the arc. Sam, we talked, Sam and Dustin, I think I heard you guys talk about the fact that like shooting in an arena that you've been in before, which we have with UCF, you sometimes see better shooting percentages than like arena games or other road games where you've never played before because of the depth and stuff. But Coog shot just 19% from three in the first half and only shot 2 free throws in the first half. Now, I know that we play a physical brand of basketball. We score a decent amount from inside the arc. You can't tell me that we only got fouled one time to shoot a free throw in the first half. That's neither here nor there. We could talk about that here in a minute. But the second half saw the Golden Knights cool down a little bit. All in all, Cougs, not going to go too deep into it before this, but just to kind of summarize the game, Cougs pull out an 8-point win on the road in Orlando. Really exciting to get that win. LJ Cryer showed up massive in this game with 25 points. On a night where Emmanuel Sharp only got you 4 points, the 25 from LJ Cryer was absolutely huge. Also want to give a huge shout out to Javier Francis and Wani Roberts in a game that got fairly physical. They managed to stay out of foul trouble for the most part. What do you guys think of that? The first game versus UCF?
You know, it's funny. You rarely see a game that has one tie and one lead change. But that was this game because UCF scored the first 6 points. Houston didn't catch up all the way until what was it? The dunk for Javier to tie it at 42, and then the 3 for Jamal Shed to make it 45-42, immediately put them ahead. And then they led the rest of the way. So they never led or tied, and until they tied and then led the rest of the way. Kind of a funny game. But it did kind of remind me of a lot of Houston's road games this year, and that you kind of saw both teams make runs, and then it ends up being pretty close in the closing minutes. This one may be a little bit less close, especially in the final like 60 seconds. Than a lot of Houston's road games have been, which have been largely determined in the last 60 seconds, if not even a smaller number of seconds. But remarkably, in 6 out of Houston's last 7 road games now came out on top, which is just an insane accomplishment in what is both the best conference in the sport and the conference that saw the 3rd fewest road wins over the course of the season. So just really, really impressive. And yeah, it was only their 2nd game without JoJo Tugler, being down to 8 available scholarship players. 0 points from the bench. Then you kind of mentioned Emmanuel Sharp having an off night too, but I mean, you just won because your 4 other starters really stepped up in a big way. Cryer's 3rd straight game with at least 22 points. Shed 16 and 8 and 3 steals. You mentioned the strong games by Wani and Javier. Each played well defensively. Wani playing with essentially one hand.
I totally didn't mention that. Yeah.
The Kansas game, he at least kind of looked like he was starting to be a little bit comfortable with that offhand again. You saw him in this game just making a huge point to not even try to hold the ball with his offhand, which had the stitches there in the webbing of his hand. So, winning with 0 or having 0 points off the bench is not probably the way that you want to win necessarily as a team, but if your stars show up in a big way and the whole team, including the bench, brings their A game defensively and on the glass, then Houston obviously still can win this way. So, we say it a lot, but it's good to be able to win in a lot of different ways. And I think Houston showed that again in this one.
And everything about how this one started screamed upset. Big, loud crowd for the number 1 team coming to town. UCF playing way better than their season averages in a lot of areas, especially offensively, hitting way more shots than the Cougs. You mentioned the 19% 3-point shooting, Bobby. I think we had to hit 1 or 2 3-pointers late to get up to 19%. I think it was 0% for a good chunk of the first half there. And in all of our years watching college basketball, I mean, both you guys, think of how many times you've seen a scenario like this. Highly ranked team near the end of the regular season as some level of favorite goes into a loud, hostile opponent's arena. That opponent plays one of their best games of the season. Fans rush the court in. I think no spoilers here, but very grateful that nothing like that necessarily outside of the first half happened in Orlando last Wednesday night. I mean, I know UCF player embodied that scenario I just kind of listed off more than CJ Walker, a guy playing this final home game in Orlando. Very talented player, a guy who was a 5-star high school recruit who career has largely been derailed by injuries. And I think you saw stretches of why that guy was evaluated to be a future college star. I mean, you saw it from Walker, not just the usual big man stuff, was at least feeling it enough to be willing to attempt and make a 3-pointer in real time. On one hand, I was kind of saying to myself over and over again, some variation of, well, they can't keep making shots at this rate, right? But also thinking to myself, and you pointed that out to me, I think in real time via text, Bobby, they're getting good enough looks in these cases that I don't know, man, maybe they will just keep hitting these these 3-pointers, and I'll be muttering it to myself as, you know, the final 2 minutes and we're down by not a close enough margin for me to think we're going to win this game. Yeah, I would have bit your hand off for not just a win here, but a win where the final outcome wasn't really in doubt, despite some iffy free throw shooting from usually reliable guys later for the final few minutes of basketball. I mean, I felt pretty good about being only down 1 bucket at the break, and it still took a good bit of the second half before you saw the Cougars kind of take control and get that lead and have that weird, this game only changing leads one time kind of thing. And I thought the second half really was a demonstration of what a damn good defensive group this year's team is, coming off especially that Oklahoma game where Oklahoma did just anomalously well as compared to other teams have done against the Cougs, even in Big 12 play. And it's not the only reason UH won this game, but I think that's where the Cougs imposed their will on the Knights, as they've imposed their will on a lot of teams this season. Glad Javier Francis is getting his flowers here because he's coming off that game against Oklahoma where he was in foul trouble too much to really impact that one, gave you 6 offensive boards, and showed when he got the ball in the low block that UCF didn't really have anyone who could hang with him. I mean, I would actually call it a trap game, Bobby. I don't disagree. I wouldn't disagree with that assessment, at least when you looked at the last 2 games of the year, even acknowledging that UCF was a much better team than we probably expected in the preseason. I mean, easy trap to fall into all the stuff I just described at the beginning there. And this team didn't. And I think it's a testimony to how special they are that since January 9th, you know, with the exception, guys, of the Oklahoma State home game, U of H faced 9 KenPom top 60 opponents on the road, with this last one in Orlando and won 6 of them. Guys, I'll give you a hint. It's a number less than 9. In the past 4 seasons in the American, how many times did U of H face any top 60 opponent on the road? It's less than 9. That's your hint.
The last how many seasons?
4 seasons.
4 seasons. I'm gonna say like 5.
Yeah, I was gonna say like 6.
Bobby, you went by Price's Right rules. You were about to say the right answer. It was 7. 7 times in 4 seasons combined. You did it 9 times this season and came out the victor 6. Like that's so impressive, even zooming out beyond this game.
Yeah, I think the reason for me that this wasn't a trap game was that you had prize of the Big 12 title like there. And not to like pat myself on the back too hard for my preview where I said, hey, I think UCF's a good defensive team. I think I was wrong. They scored more points than I thought they were going to. 59 and 62 possessions. Nearly a point per possession is not a bad defensive performance, or not offensive performance against this Cougar defense. But, I kind of said as like, I don't think Jamal Shed and Juwan Roberts are going to let this team lose with a Big 12 title on the line. They didn't. And LJ Cryer certainly was a big part of that too with the game he had, and Javier, like we mentioned as well. But the veteran leaders on this team just were not going to let Houston lose this game with the Big 12 title hanging in the balance, and they didn't, and got to grab that share of the Big 12 title, at least a share. Spoiler alert, they did a little better than a share, but yeah, that for me was, I think, a huge story in this game was those guys just not being willing to let this team lose.
Yeah, and to Dustin's point, that game did give us the share of the Big 12 title. Heading into Saturday, the Cougs needed a win against Kansas, or they needed Iowa State to lose to Kansas State. And right as tip off happened, we see the realization and the final score of Kansas State beating Iowa State, and your Cougars are Big 12 regular season champions. We already were, but now it is a solo title. How great it was. And, kind of the crazy thing about this is it rendered the Kansas game pointless. You wanted to beat them, but in the grand scheme of things, you're the one seed, you got the title, you're the solo champ. It kind of rendered the game useless, but man, the Cougs did not play like that game did not suddenly matter. Man, I'm sitting here at the house and my mind is blown. You guys are at the game, so I'm going to defer to you guys a lot on this. But that score gets up to 29-9, and I text you guys. I'm like, are we up 20 on Kansas right now? Like, this is insane. And we won by more than 20. We won by 30. We had bigger leads than 20, but that 20-point lead just felt unreal to me that Kansas was in our arena. We're beating them by 20, and it doesn't look like they're going to even get close to us.
Houston got the next 5. It was 34-9.
Yeah, we ran them out of the building. It was just a good old fashioned ass kicking, and it just felt great. And as much as I want to talk about this game from a statistic or X's and O's perspective, you guys were there. I really want to lean into you guys and talk to you what it was like being in Fertitta. That place was insane on TV. It looked crazy in that place. And what was it like celebrating our first ever Big 12 title, guys? Sam, go ahead, bud.
It was surreal, man. The whole experience from walking in, to the entrance and leaving, it felt like a celebration of being a Cougar fan. It felt like almost a payoff of, I'm not gonna pretend like, honestly, like we talk about, it's tough being a Cougar, and there are some stuff where it's just like, man, this could be fandom could be a lot easier, but like we've also had so many high highs, guys. Like in a lot of ways, it's funny to say we were very fortunate, but for all the lows, for all the times that the three of us went to Hofheinz and it was the three of us and our 200 closest friends to watch just, a not inspired Tom Pender's non-conference game, or got an even much less inspired anything that James Dickey era of Cougar basketball did to get there. And we got there with like a decent bit of space between like when we entered and tip off, but like less than we expected. Shot to 45 South in downtown for, despite not living in Houston for 7 years, still reminding me of what true traffic hell on earth.
You forgot, buddy. You forgot. It happens all the time.
Didn't forget, but and certainly wouldn't after this trip. But like, and we were like, I would say, Dustin, we were some of the last people to get, like, our section was mostly filled by the time we were there. Like, and I remember when we sat in Lawrence and I was just like seeing how Fog Allen like filled up like within 15, 20 minutes tip off, and thinking to myself, it would be cool if we could do something like that. And then getting to Fertitta and being like, oh man, like we've done this. This is going to be a good atmosphere. I already know before anything basketball wise happens on the court that this is going to be an absolutely rabid crowd. And I don't want to say I was as confident as like, we're not going to lose this game, but my confidence just getting into that arena, seeing everyone already just like in a really spirited mood, jacked during the senior celebration. And, Wani, the reception that Wani and Jamal Shed got for, their final 2 senior day honoree thing, that was, so it was just like, this is going to be a good day. This is going to be a good Cougar game. And it was loud. Even we were up by enough of a margin that Kansas was never going to come back in this game. It was just loud start to finish. It was a great effort. I think it was buoyed by the great effort on the floor from the guys with Houston on their jerseys, but make no mistake, like that crowd was the sixth man. That crowd, the same way that maybe the crowd in Lawrence like got U of H off its game enough that Kansas, got that early lead, and Kansas was really feeding off it in that game. 100% the same thing happened on Saturday in Houston. It happened at just so much more ferocity. And not that I've really seen this take in the wild, but Kevin McCullough ended up missing a lot of this game hurt. Hunter Dickinson left it. Make no mistake, this was an ass kicking when those guys went forward. This would have been an ass kicking if Kansas had a fully healthy starting 5. There was no team that was going to win this game other than the Cougs, and it was so fun to be a part of it. Like, I'll let Dustin talk about some more of this. Like, the Nance speech was so cool. The Willie Fritz doing the Who's House at the start and Case Keenum doing it in the second quarter. It all felt like a celebration of Cougardom. And it was, pardon the profanity here, but as somebody who's only able to get out to, maybe one of these a year, oh, it was so fucking fun. Like I wish I could bottle the kind of feeling that I get from going to Fertitta Center. And yeah, of all, like, I don't get homesick very often, but stuff like that, experiences like that make me 100% homesick for Houston. And then like in a good way, in a positive way, but like, oh man, like I'm so jealous of people like you, Dustin. They get to do that a fair number of times, like during the season. Like it's all Cougar basketball, such a blast.
Man, two of the great decisions I've made in my life have come in recent years. One was getting season tickets the year before I moved back to Houston, not even knowing that I was going to move back to Houston. And then, finding proposing to my fiance. Like that's the level of like good decisions that I've made.
We'll tell her you listed the proposal first.
Yeah. I don't think she listens to the podcast. She will know. But no, it's those two and everything else, right? No, and it was like Sam said,
Do some editing, Sam. Sorry.
It felt like a big party. It reminded me, I felt very similar to the way I felt to the game at home versus the Longhorns, where as much as it felt like it was about the game, it felt like a big party. You called it a celebration of the city of Houston. And it was just an unbelievable atmosphere from start to finish. Outcome of the game just never really in doubt, especially once it got going. Just the list of Houston celebrities and just getting that huge ovation during the senior day festivities, the unbelievable noise every time the game was going on, the cheer that we got when they announced on the board that Kansas State had won and therefore Houston was the outright Big 12 champions, and then all the way through to Jim Nance's speech as he got his banner unveiled as the voice of March Madness, which I mean you talked about, harkening back to watching games with the three of us in empty,
I love it. I love the story you're about to tell.
Alliance Pavilion. I mean, that was Jim Nance, man. He showed up when we were terrible. There's the first year that I was at U of H. I believe we were playing Middle Tennessee State at home, and early on in the first half, we just we're like, oh crap, that's Jim Nance sitting courtside. We're like, and you just kind of look around at this, just again, just like 85% empty basketball arena as we're playing okay against the Middle Tennessee State, and it's just like, well, I bet he's never coming back to a game. Like this is terrible, but it was the opposite. He always came back, even in that game. At halftime, he came over, shook hands with every student that wanted to shake hands with him. Said, very similar to what he said here, is that you guys are, he told us, even when there was a few of us, he said, you guys are all making us proud as alumni. I thought it was cool that in his speech, he kind of said something similar about everyone.
Very similar, yeah.
Proud as alumni. So for him, he has the same outlook, the same energy when there's 25 of us cheering on a bad team as when there's an arena of thousands, a completely jam-packed arena cheering on the number one team in the country. He's going to be there and he's going to be himself regardless. But I bet even for him, it's a lot more fun to watch this team be really good in a jam-packed Fertitta Center. So I was just so happy for him. And then so happy for Ryan Elvin, man. The years he put in this program. He got the start in this game, got played for the first couple of minutes, didn't get any points right away, but then came back in before the under 4 media timeout. They gave him, I think, more of a run at the end than they have been most of the year, I think on purpose. And got the couple of free throws, got a real big noise. And then when he hits the three in the corner, Jamal Shedd's final assist ever in the Fertitta Center was hitting Ryan Elvin in the corner for that beautiful three. Yeah, man, I get goosebumps. I get chills just thinking about it. I don't know that I've ever heard the Fertitta Center that loud. That was something else. Got another bucket, ended up with 7 points. Was just showing out in his final game in the Fertitta Center. So just an unbelievable atmosphere from start to finish. And as we've this whole season has been unbelievably fun as a season ticket holder at the Fertitta Center. I didn't know if genuinely we could top, the back-to-back of the Texas and Iowa State games, beating Texas and then beating Iowa State to gain sole possession of first place in the Big 12. But man, this was it. This was the absolute perfect culmination of a undefeated run that Houston has had at the Fertitta Center this year.
So just a little bit of fun here. If I would have given you at the beginning of the season, Ryan Elvin over under 1 point versus Kansas in the Fertitta Center, what is the over on that? What are the odds on that? It's got to be plus 600-700, right?
Oh yeah, over would have been getting some good money there for sure.
Man, I would have gone to like the. I hope I was gonna say. I hope it's not because we're getting our ass kicked or something like that in
Right.
one of those. And
I
one of them kind of ended up being that, but not like
yeah,
not as bad as
and
like Saturday.
I remember when I was in for the Jackson State game I went to with Dustin this year. The students started chanting for Ryan Elvin like with 11 minutes left to go in the game, and I was like, "Come on, man!" And Dustin was actually looks at me and goes, "Man, we got the Big 12. This may be one of the last chances he gets to play." And I was like, "You're probably right. He played a lot this year, guys. He played way more than we probably expected." So, you're right. That was just an awesome moment to see a guy who, preferred walk on, has given a lot to the has given a lot in terms of what he brings to the team. He's a classic glue guy that and even his senior video, you hear a lot of the guys talking about like, hey, he's the one who keeps us responsible out there. He's the one that if we get lazy in practice, you can count on Ryan Elvin. So yeah, to your point, Dustin, awesome moment here. Just something that was discussed. I don't know if you guys went back and watched the game, but at halftime, they're actually talking to Bill Self, and the sideline reporter comes on and goes, "Yeah, if this game continues to go, Coach Self said that he's probably going to pull some of his players and, just get ready for Kansas City." And you're just like, yeah, that's an ass whipping, boys. That's an ass whipping. All right.
Yeah, we made Bill Self wave the
Question
white
if he
flag.
should. Yeah. That's what we did. So just what an experience watching, what an experience as a Cougar fan. And I can imagine how great it was being in the arena. And I don't know which one of you went live on the account to show the celebration, but thank you. Good looking out, boys. All right. So before we go to the, I'm sorry, go ahead, Dustin.
I was gonna say before we leave, I just have a couple more points I wanted to throw out in regards to this game. And I do, we wanted to talk about the vibes, but I mean, you got to throw out some numbers there as well from
Yeah.
this. Kansas, fewest points in a road game under Bill Self. Their first 30-point conference loss since the year 2000. First time ever not hitting 50 points in a Big 12 game. First time not hitting 50 points in a conference game since 1982. Man, you're not going to see a more stark difference home versus away. Kansas missing 14 shots the entire game up in Allen Fieldhouse, and then missing 14 of their first 17 shots in this one. Just absolutely wild stuff. And the only other thing I wanted to say before we move on here.
Yeah, of course.
Said Lot, man. Said Lot played excellent this one. Like, he got in some foul trouble, picked up more fouls than you'd like, but he made a bunch of big plays in this one. I think something that's been really looming over the end of this Cougar season the last week or so, ever since we got news that JoJo Tugler is out, is you go, okay, does that kind of, lessen your ability to make a deep run in the NCAA tournament if you don't have JoJo Tugler coming off the bench? And Said Lot is not JoJo Tugler. He doesn't have to go out there and be JoJo Tugler. But I think what he showed in this game is, hey, he is ready to step up in a really, really big game and make some big plays against really, really good teams. And he is someone who the staff actually can rely on to be, not only to just like eat up minutes in the postseason, but eat up minutes and be making good plays and not be just a big liability out there like you might expect from a true freshman that you weren't really thinking was going to play meaningful minutes this year.
I was gonna say, I think having the first game in the memory bank made that dominance that U of H inflicted on Kansas that much more satisfying, because this wasn't just Kansas's worst road loss the current season. Dustin just listed off all the ways this is just a unbelievably just decisive margin of defeat for that program, for that very Tiffany college basketball program. This game was U of H imposing its will, making Kansas quit. And if you don't want to take my word for it as some guy on a podcast, go read Bill Self's post-game comments and take it for one of the most accomplished coaches in college basketball history. He said basically the same thing I just did, that the Cougs made the Jayhawks quit in no uncertain terms. And I want to wind up to give myself a pat on the back here, because you can go back to the first game and kind of understand why the Cougs just ran away with this one in so many ways. The ability, I think, to turn the Jayhawks over above all else, because as much as it felt like everything went wrong in Allen Fieldhouse, the Cougs still in that one did a fantastic job turning them over in that one. Obviously, it only goes so far when your opponent isn't missing any shots, but and I think that was the biggest reason for optimism when we talked about this game, previewing it, Dustin, before there was a return game, and Kansas ended up with a whopping 18 turnovers once again. And I just want to add to Dustin's praising of Said Lot, because you were 100% correct in the pregame, Dustin, to present concerns about the possibility of Said going head to head with a high level veteran big man like Hunter Dickinson. And we basically had the worst case scenario throughout this game in terms of Javier Francis being in foul trouble and said kind of getting thrown in the deep end. But I thought later on when Javier was on the bench with 4 fouls in the second half, and U of H was, I think, really putting the last bits of dirt on the Jayhawks in this game, he played intelligently with 3 fouls. There was a possession where Dickinson ended up getting, kind of a baby hook shot there where said held his own, but didn't let Dickinson bait him into a stupid foul in an and one situation. Because, in that situation, Dickinson making that baby hook shot was less important than U of H's only 2 scholarship big men or centers being on the bench with 4 fouls. I think a big testament to how basketball smart this fan base is, kind of end my thoughts here starting where we began with the crowd. Said got a big round of applause, I want to say, the last time he went to the bench from the Cougar. Like it wasn't just, we're not just, presenting these unique and curated insights here. I think everyone in the arena, I'm sure many people watching saw that said lot performance, even if the box score wouldn't scream out at you. And the only other thought I had, guys, is I thought it was very funny that for all the bluster about Kansas being this big program and you're just a little American program, they hardly brought any fucking fans to Fertitta for what a big program that is. And I just be like, oh, well, it's really expensive to get there. Oh, yeah, because it was super cheap for Dustin and I to get tickets to Fall Gown. What'd you pay, like $30, Dustin?
Yeah, no, I got 2025.
I paid literally hundreds of dollars just for that, not to mention my flight, not to mention my lodging, not to mention incidentals. Like,
Right.
And more Cougar fans were 100% at Allen Fieldhouse for that first game. And I know it's not Kansas's best year by their standards, but if you're this gold standard program, like like Memphis, which I loathe to praise anything about Memphis, but Memphis, absolutely. The game I went to last year with Dustin brought more fans to that one than Kansas did on Saturday. So I'm just gonna leave that little cherry of that fan base who I just have no fucking time for at the end of this basketball. That's my last.
Y'all made him
obviously.
drop 2 F-bombs. Way to go, Kansas.
Exactly.
Way to go, Kansas.
New record. Might actually force me to do some editing for once in my life. That's all I got. Sorry.
No need to apologize. And we are definitely going to talk about the Big 12 tournament. But before we do that, we got some awards that they have, that the Big 12 has given out, plus one national award that kind of came down the pipe today. Big 12 Coach of the Year goes to Kelvin Sampson. Not a big surprise there. Usually your conference championship coach who comes over from a lower ranked conference and wins it tends to have a pretty good argument for Coach of the Year, especially when he loses 2 first-round draft picks. So LJ Cryer gets second team All Big 12, Wani third team All Big 12, Javier Francis All Big 12 honorable mention, and Emmanuel Sharp got that, and JoJo Tugler All Big 12 freshman. And then we go to Jamal Shed, who got Big 12 Player of the Year, Big 12 Defensive Player of the Year, All Big 12 first team, All Big 12 defensive team, and today was named a Sporting News All-American. Gentlemen, any thoughts on what you see there?
Yeah, really happy for Jamal Shed. I think for a while there was some debate about whether Conference Player of the Year would be like him or Hunter Dickinson. But I think the way that he played and the way that Houston played down the stretch made it kind of to the point where there was no real, I don't think, argument for anyone other than Jamal Shed being the Big 12 Player of the Year. And I think same for him being the Big 12 Defensive Player of the Year as well. There was just like, not that there wasn't anyone else that played really high level defense in the Big 12, but just the level that Houston played at, the level that Jamal Shed played at. It's like, how are you going to honestly put anyone else in front of him in that line? And then kind of the same with Kelvin Sampson for Coach of the Year. There were a lot of guys that had a strong argument. There's like at least 3 other schools whose fans are like really wanted their guy to be in consideration for this award, if not a national award. Grant McCaslin at Texas Tech, the kind of situation he inherited and got them really competitive and above 500 and battling in the Big 12 right away after inheriting kind of a mess. Like, that's damn impressive. TJ Otzelberger had an fantastic year for Iowa State. Kelvin Sampson, in some, being a little bit generous, maybe said that he thought that Otzelberger should have won it over him. Mark Pope, BYU was under 500 in the West Conference last year, went above 500 in the Big 12 this year. Like, that's a remarkable turnaround job there. But at the same time, how are you going to put anyone ahead of Kelvin Sampson? And I say this nationally, and I know that there's a good chance Kelvin Sampson won't win every National Coach of the Year award. And I think any award he doesn't win is terrible, because what are you going to say? The guy lost a lottery pick, a first-team All-American, a 10-point per game starter, his top glue guy. And then once this season started, he lost 3 key contributors to injuries, to season-ending injuries, and all that. Oh yeah, by the way, you got to step up from the minor leagues to the best conference in the sport as you're dealing with all that. And he won the Big 12 by 2 games, and he's coaching the team that's #1 in every poll or metric. Like, I'm not saying that there's not some other coaches in the Big 12 and around the country that had good years, but like genuinely, what do you say to any of that? Like, how does anyone? Yeah, but Hubert Davis that like won the ACC, and like,
it's pretty hard to win at UNC, Dust.
Yeah,
yeah, no one's ever done that.
yeah. I mean,
Coach Joe.
like again, not that no one else in the country deserves to be in the conversation or did a good job, but like, yeah, what Kelvin Sampson has outdone even himself this year. And that is something because I didn't think our expectations of him could have been any higher than they were coming into this season. And yet somehow he exceeded, I think, even our, pretty optimistic expectations for the season.
Yeah, Jamal Shead deservedly grabbed that absolute glut of hardware that you guys talked about on just about every first team All-American team that I've seen various publications put out there. I wanted to shout out a couple guys who also are on the awards group. LJ Cryer deservedly getting second team All Big 12 first season, where I think he showed he was so much more than just an incredible scorer, which he was at Baylor. But I think I was gonna say there were questions, quite frankly, from him, like when he joined this program, like about other areas of his game where he wanted to get better. And I think emphatic check marks there. Like this guy, if you don't believe he's the best individual defender, that's fine. It's probably Jamal Shead in the starting 5, but you don't having the #1 consensus defense like the Cougars do if LJ Cryer isn't a positive contributor there and a better all-around basketball player than I think he ever was at Baylor, which again, he was a good basketball player at Baylor. He was starting from a very strong position there. So that says a lot. And especially with the last month or so he's had, like, didn't have the strongest start to the season for, I think, the crazy high expectations that we had for the guy. But man, he's been so important to this last month or so, and the Cougars finishing the season as strong as they did. And I thought it impressed me from the people that, vote for these awards that Javier Francis got honorable mention, because if you don't watch the games really closely, you wouldn't appreciate Francis's impact just based on the counting stats, even though he has, I think good stuff for blocking and rebounding. His per 40 stuff is off the charts, but not necessarily a guy whose numbers immediately jump out at you. But I think he was such an impactful guy for this team in Big 12 play and why this team is where it is right now. And I was pleasantly surprised and very happy when I was singing an Intercontinental and saw that Javier Francis was among the all-conference honorees. So yeah, that's my unique thoughts. Obviously, very much agree with Dustin. Kelvin Sampson. It is a testament to Big 12 basketball that there are a few other guys, I think McCaslin, Pope, and Oswald chief among them, who did very good jobs this year, who absolutely should be among the coaches in the conversation for best coaching jobs in Division I this year. But in my very biased opinion, none of them touch Kelvin Sampson. And again, if take my word for it, the people who vote on these things, who I think collectively probably watch a fair amount of basketball, seem to take our side on this one.
Yeah, I'm super excited for Shed to get all the awards that he did. Deserves all of them. I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, he's a finalist for some of the top player of the year awards.
The Bob Cousy Award, I think I saw.
Yeah. So, I mean, no surprises here that he got that, but to be player of the year and defensive player of the year just really shows that Jamal Shead, because a lot of times when to your point, Sam, counting stats, a lot of times people see those. And when you look at Jamal Shead, you go, that's pretty good. But to also get defensive player, that means you're putting it up on the offensive end and the defensive end at both times. So super excited for Jamal there, and just really excited. So y'all want to talk Big 12 tournament? Maybe at least a little bit. There's not a ton to talk about really, because when you're the 1 seed, you're automatically in the quarters and you don't really know who you're playing yet. But it looks like it's going to be between OU and TCU, both teams that played us close this year. So not exactly excited about those matchups. The loss to TCU in the last second win over OU. So not super excited to play either one of those teams, but it is the Big 12. Any matchup you get really is going to be a difficult one. Guys, like I said, I don't have too much on it because it is it's pretty early and we don't really know who we're playing or things like that. But what are your thoughts headed into the Big 12 tournament?
Go for it, Sam.
Oh, my bad. I think for me personally, I just like to see U of H make the semifinals after winning that opening game against TCU or Oklahoma. I mean, I won't be devastated if they don't. I think really the worst case scenario for me would be U of H playing 3 games because they made the championship, but losing that third game. So you get all the wear and tear of the maximum number of tournament games you could play in U of H's station without the hardware. And I love conference tournament basketball, guys. Like, I'm going to spend my hard-earned American money this weekend attending 2 championship games out here in Vegas on Saturday because my significant other is out of town. I love it. But U of H has nothing to gain other than pride and bragging rights, which aren't nothing. And I know, and like Kelvin Sampson, he said as much since then. Kelvin Sampson's not going to just like play his bench and try to get out of this tournament as quickly as possible. The man only knows trying to win. Like I think, and that's most coaches out there. I'm not trying to paint Kelvin Sampson as very unique in that regard, but like, that's how I feel about this tournament. I love conference tournament basketball. It is, I think, a more important part that maybe people will acknowledge about what makes this part of the year sporting wise very exciting. But I guess I'm grateful that U of H station in the sport is such that this tournament doesn't mean a thing, especially since you have the regular season hardware as well. It'd be great to go 2 for 2. If it somehow happens, that'll be great. And I'll be celebrating and I'll be talking about how cool it is on this podcast. But I think that's my general thing. And I've watched actually a decent chunk of the first 2 Big 12 games, the quote unquote worst games this tournament. That's how much I love it. But like, that's more just as a general college basketball liker as opposed to someone who's really like dying to see U of H, win this thing. It's like you said, it's such a champagne problem to have. Like, it doesn't matter how we do. Like, there's literally nothing we could do to not be so locked into one of the 1 seeds come Selection Sunday.
Yeah, part of the reason Kelvin Sampson is not going to start his bench in this one is he doesn't have enough bench to start them.
Yeah. A starter's going to have to play. A regular starter's going to have to play.
Even if Ryan Elvin's out there for 40 minutes, you're going to have to play some starters as well.
Technically a starter.
Yeah, he started he started 1 game in a row actually as of this recording. But no, you get TCU or OU, 2 teams that played you real close, but also in true road games, you didn't get a home game against either of those teams. I'm kind of the opinion I would be perfectly happy for us to lose in the quarterfinals in our first game and just stay healthy and get ready for the NCAA tournament. I will say if we do win that one, I hope it's against TCU because they are, as it stands, the only team to have outscored Houston this year because, of course, Iowa State and Kansas beat Houston, but Houston beat them by more in the return trip. Didn't get a return trip from TCU, so if we can beat them by at least 2, we'll have a positive scoring differential against everybody because that's super meaningful, of course. But no, I think it is kind of you call it a champagne problem. I have it in my notes as the elephant in the room, which is do we even want Houston to be here? Yeah. Because you are again going to be one of the favorites to win the NCAA tournament. But that is on a fairly narrow thread, which is, man, if you have even like 1 more player get hurt, you are at disaster levels of like short bench and shortness of like available scholarship players. So for Houston to have to play 3 games in 3 days, oh man, I don't think I want that. I don't think I want that even if you could guarantee me that they were going to win on all 3 of them and get the double Big 12 trophy. If that happens and everyone stays healthy, will I be thrilled and then breathe a huge sigh of relief? Yes, but man, I feel like I'm more than I am holding my breath for the results of the games in Kansas City. I am holding my breath for Houston's tournament journey to end at the Big 12 tournament with no one else hurt because that's just so scary to play these games when you've got behind you, you've got a regular season title ahead of you, you've got an NCAA tournament, but you're in this weird limbo where you're just like, please, 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 no one turn an ankle, no one do anything, just stay healthy, wrap this team in bubble wrap, whatever we have to do.
All right, so we talked tournament, but we're gonna have a little fun here with the
most important topic, honestly.
Because honestly, there's something that makes college sports special, right? Over professional sports. There's something that makes it fun. And this right here is a prime example of that for me. The Big 12 for the men's and the women's tournaments have released a special menu with a menu item based on every single team. All right. So I'm going to go through the list and then I want you gentlemen to tell me your 3 favorites. All right. So we're going to start with the general consensus, the Big 12 dog. All right. Foot-long hot dog, ketchup, mustard, cabbage coleslaw, sesame seeds, onion, cheese sauce, orange peppers. All right. Then you have Baylor. Baylor has the Baylor brisket sliders. I wanted to throw Baptist in there somewhere, but I couldn't figure out where. Dr. Pepper glazed brisket with sweet coleslaw in a brioche bun. Then you got BYU, which is Cosmos churros, which is basically churros with sweet cream drizzle, mini marshmallow, cinnamon sugar, which I don't know why they put cinnamon sugar on it. That's what a churro is, and a toffee crumble. Then you have UCF, the Citronaut Float. Great name, by the way. Great name there, which is a orange soda and vanilla ice cream float. Cincy has the cheese coney, jumbo hot dog. They made sure that they specified that it was Cincinnati style chili topped with onion and cheddar cheese.
It's like no grade A meat in this at all.
Yeah, it's
grade C or lower.
Terrible. We want you to know. And then our great Houston Cougars, you have Shasta's brisket tacos, beef brisket, corn and black bean salsa, cilantro and lime on corn tortillas. Iowa State has the Iowa State green chili pork walking taco, green chili pork, shredded lettuce, sour cream, cheddar and pepper jack cheese, all packed into a bag of Doritos. Kansas is the Big J's loaded mac and cheese, cavatappi pasta, cheese sauce, house smoked pulled pork, barbecue sauce, fried onions, pepper flakes. Then you have Kansas State, which is the Power Cat PB&J, a fried peanut butter and jelly sandwich topped with powdered sugar. So basically a fried Uncrustable. If you have any questions about what it is, it's a fried Uncrustable.
Google's your friend.
OU is doing the Oklahoma onion burger, all beef patty topped with Tabasco fried onions paired with a ranch dipping sauce. OSU is the orange power pizza, which sounds really good, but the picture of it is just awful. I don't know if you guys looked at it.
I did not see the picture of that one.
It is one of the worst looking concession stand pizzas of all time. Anyways, it's a pizza topped with pepperoni, sausage, ham, sweet pepper bacon, mozzarella and cheddar cheese, and a ranch drizzle. TCU, also a weird one. Cowtown loaded tots, tater tots, queso, brisket, corn and black bean salsa topped with the Horned Frog purple sour cream. It looks radioactive. I don't know if when you guys were kids you had purple ketchup, but it looks just like that. It does not look like something you should eat. Texas has the Big Bertha loaded baked potato. It's a loaded baked potato with brisket in it. I don't need to walk through Texans about what a loaded baked potato is. Texas Tech is the Masked Rider burger. All beef patty, cheese, fried onion ring, pickled jalapenos, and the Red Raider barbecue sauce. And then finally, you have West Virginia, which has the Mountaineer pepperoni roll, which is basically a sliced pepperoni and mozzarella cheese layered into a buttered roll. Dustin, hit me with your three favorite.
All right, so this is maybe a homer pick, but I liked it anyway. I'm going with Shasta's brisket tacos right up top. And I mean, you got to throw a huge asterisk here because anytime you put brisket in anything, I feel like that is one of those meats, or even more than usual, large variation in how good you can, it is based on how good the brisket is. And so I don't know that I'm wildly confident that at a basketball arena that you're getting really good brisket, but it's in Kansas City, so I'm going to choose to believe that they probably are doing a decent job with it there. And I love me some brisket tacos, so cilantro and lime, I'm all about it. So that was right up there for me. The Masked Rider burger sounded real good to me as well. The fried onion ring, the sweet pickled jalapenos, barbecue sauce on a burger is a combo that not hard to get that one right, and always pretty good in my opinion. And then I'm a slut for churros. So Cosmos churros, I got to throw that in there as well. I got to give my one sweet to go with my two meals there. I'm never turning down I've never in my life, not one single time in my life, has anyone ever been like, do you want to get churros or do you want a churro? And has the answer not been yes. So I'm not going to pretend like I wouldn't be ordering a churro if I was in Kansas City this weekend.
Side note, if you're ever having you want a churro and you aren't going to a fair anytime soon, the fried churros at Jack in the Box, really good. Just in case you haven't had it.
We'll co-sign that.
There's specifically a churro place that is within short drive of my domicile at the moment, which
nice.
My partner and I have taken advantage of on multiple occasions, I will say.
Nice.
So Bobby,
Sam?
I thought about this one a lot. I tried to pick it. I tried to almost make it like a 3-course meal in terms of the items I picked, but obviously I think at 3 I liked a lot. So I wanted to start with kind of the meal course here. That's your Oklahoma onion burger. I love onions. I have a running joke with my significant other that when they go out of town this weekend, I'm going to eat a meal that's just caramelized onions. Don't worry, if my mom and dad are listening, I'm not going to be doing that. But I really
That's
love
just French onion soup.
exactly.
That's
I
all
love
that
onions.
is.
Though. That's the point. It really, other than raw, like just cut onions, fried, sauteed, grilled, caramelized, love them. And this burger is topped with those Tabasco fried onions you mentioned, Bobby. I'll admit, never had that before, but I would love to give it a try.
Is it Tabasco? Because that sounds a lot better. I keep seeing they got posted as tobacco onions, and I was like, that doesn't sound good. I'm hoping it is actually
did I read it wrong?
No.
I thought it was, yeah.
Oh,
See,
no,
I saw it as tobacco onions the first time I saw it too. And I looked up tobacco onions and it's the like thinly fried onions that are on there. So I don't.
Oh, it's like the onion strips. Okay.
Yeah. Sam's like, that doesn't change my answer.
I was gonna say, I love those. Those are like on a burger, maybe the fried egg, but that's not this good. But those are awesome.
The part about all onions being good, which I co-sign on, by the way.
Yeah, I hate onions. So more for y'all. More for y'all. I know.
Table this. But that's my main course. I'm gonna pair that with the UCF Citronaut drink, that orange soda float that you're mentioning, Bobby. I mean, we kind of have a love-hate relationship with the University of Central Florida here, though probably more love than hate lately.
You do. I don't.
The Central Florida guests we've had have been fantastic.
Yes, I will give them that.
We've had multiple sons of UCF on, and they've had us on their show, and just like I couldn't invent anything bad about those guys. That's helping it there. But frankly, guys, the cream, like no matter your feelings on UCF, that creamsicle combination of orange and vanilla, it's a pretty unbeatable combo. And for dessert, I really thought about the churro, but like I'm sorry, I don't trust people in Utah to make a churro. Like I don't trust people in Utah to make anything with flavor. And you can interpret that comment.
They're not making it.
However, I'm choosing. I
just picture a bunch of Mormons like, I guess this is how you do it.
That's why I'm sorry. I don't even tangentially associate with that. I don't trust it. So I'm going with the
BYU Alumni Association just back there frying churros.
Yeah. But the guys in like the little, like the white shorts, the white dress shirts, like, oh, Elder Smith, these are some really good. No, but the fried PB&J, like, joke aside, the fried PB&J intrigued me. So that's my dessert course. I think I've done about 4,000 calories here and calcified my arteries even further, but that sounds like a pretty tasty meal. So shout out to the Big 12 because good idea. And really, like, there isn't an item where if someone was like, hey, you want to try this, of all the stuff you like mentioned, I'd be like, oh no. Like that all like sounds pretty decent. Like, so obviously some things could be better than others, but like they all sound like creative concepts, but also stuff where I'm just like, yeah, I'd eat that. I'd eat it.
Yeah. That. There was nothing on there that I was like, oh God, that looks terrible.
There you go. I've made our 6 LDS listeners very mad and given you the 3 items that I would make if I was feeding myself at the Big 12 tournament.
I kind of set it up like you, Sam. I wanted to give myself a meal. So I went KU with their loaded mac and cheese. You can give me pretty much mac and cheese in any form. You can put whatever you want to in it and I'm going to eat it. So I would remove the crispy fried onions. But I'll go ahead and take that there. The loaded mac and cheese. You need a drink, so you got to go with the Citronaut float. And then finally the BYU churros. That was what I went with. The best response to this list though was a KU fan. I don't know if it was Bosco's boys, but it was definitely a Kansas State fan had their fried PB&J. And they took a picture of it and they go, our food is a turnover. Literally, it's a turnover. And I was like, it is. That's pretty good. That's pretty good, guys. And he was just so mad about it. So I got a kick out of that. I think this is really cool. When I saw it, I sent it to you guys and I said the American would never, even though they could, right?
Yeah, like a lot of good food cities, yeah.
But this is one of the cool things about joining a conference like this. You have people, you have the best of the best thinking of fun engagement, things like this to really get your fans kind of fired up about various things. So I think this is really cool. I wanted to talk it out with you guys and see what you guys thought about that menu. So how do y'all feel after we've discussed basketball for a while, moving on to baseball?
Let's do it.
All right. So Cougars opened up Big 12 play. Now the basketball's wrapped up their Big 12 play. It's time for baseball to start up with theirs. And we got our first taste with baseball taking on Baylor. So Baylor came into Houston and the Cougars had a pretty good weekend against them. We'll go game by game. We can kind of break it down that way. Friday, Cougs fell behind in the first on a fielder's choice, but they bounced back in the fourth on a single to tie it up. And then Jake Reynes single brings in 2 more runs. Baylor tied it up in the fifth, but the Cougs score in the bottom of the fifth to take the lead 4-3 and win by that final score. First thing I was looking at when I looked at the box score of this game was the walk to strikeout ratio. That's something that we've talked about a lot this year. We said we wanted to see that be much better going into the year. And Jokin had a 3-walk, 4-strikeout night. So not the best we've seen from him, but he is starting to throw more pitches. I don't know if you guys noticed that, but we're starting to see a tick up in his total number of pitches. That was one of the things that we kind of talked about was what's going on. You know, he was kind of getting taken out kind of early. So watching his pitch count go up is pretty good. And then Calumetto going 3 2/3 in relief is super exciting. What'd y'all think of Friday night?
Yeah, I was really excited by the performance out of the 2 guys out of the pen. Kyle Calumetto with a 3.2 scoreless, like you said, 4 strikeouts, just 1 walk. Torrealba then came in and slammed the door shut in the 9th, and really it was kind of a continuation of a game that was going on as we were recording last week, the Sam Houston game, the first game of the Don Sanders Cup that Houston ended up winning 2-1 on the walk-off 2-run double by freshman Ace Reese in the 9th inning. Former Cougar Malachi Lott actually was the losing pitcher in that one for Sam Houston, which was a nice little a moment there. But yeah, I mean, that was a fantastic bullpen game, and we've seen over the course of the early on in the year, we've seen the bullpen kind of be up and down for this Cougar team. And when they had the bullpen game, when you had 5 pitchers combining to, go 9 innings, only allow 1 run, that was really encouraging. And then in this one, when you got 4 2/3 scoreless innings out of your bullpen between Calumetto and Torrealba, really, really good sign for this Cougar lineup. Because, we've seen some exciting things from some of the starting pitching. I think we all really like this lineup. If the pitching, especially the bullpen pitching, performs at the level we saw this weekend and we saw in Friday's game, I think that's going to be a really good sign for how tough this team can be going forward.
Yeah, the only thing I wanted to add about Friday night's game is that that 4th inning where U of H got on the board, I think one showed how this team is really capable of putting up a crooked number, even if they get off to a bit of a slow start. But that you have so many, and then my second point, you have so many newcomers capable of contributing for you. That, I mean, basically everyone other than Justin Murray drawing a walk and being the first UH guy to score in that inning, it was all newcomers. Kenneth Jimenez drawing, and nearly all of it with 2 outs, by the way. Kenneth Jimenez drawing that walk to keep the inning alive there. Ace Reese scoring Murray and getting Jimenez 90 feet away. And then Harold Call drawing another walk to keep it alive. And then Jake Reynes eventually bringing home Jimenez. And not surprising, another newcomer we've talked about, I think even more on the show, Trey Jones, giving the Cougs the lead for good in that one. To, like you guys said, really great to see Calumetto healthy enough to give you a really extended look out of the bullpen and effective enough to keep you in a close game against a conference opponent. I would just say my most broad thought about the weekend is that Baylor won't be one of the better Big 12 teams you see this season if early season results and kind of preseason projections are to be believed. But that's how you handle a series against one of the lesser teams in this league. You sweep them. And in the case of all 3 games, spend a pretty good chunk of them looking like the better team and holding some kind of lead. So that's kind of my general thought and kind of my unique Friday thoughts as well. I'm going to see Torrealba, who's looked really good at times this year and also had some kind of, outings where he just didn't have his stuff, really looked like he had his stuff in this one when the Cougs really did not have much margin for error to win that Friday night game. Yeah,
and on Saturday, the Cougs got on Baylor starter Colin McKinney early, scored 1 in the first, 1 in the third, and then the 2-run home run in the fourth drove him out of the game. Cougs added 4 in the 7th to take a shutout win, 8-0 over the Bears. Anytime you get a shutout performance from your pitching staff, you got to get excited for that. Antoine Jean going 5 1/3 with 11 strikeouts. Just super exciting to see that from your staff. We didn't have many doubts about this team's ability to hit and to see the pitching come out and do that. To Sam's point, against a maybe not the best Baylor team that they've had, but a Big 12 team nonetheless is still pretty exciting.
Yeah, Jean has been fantastic through 4 starts now. Just 2 runs allowed over 19 innings in his 4 starts thus far. In this one and thus far this season. And then Paul Schmitz and Alex Solis Schmitz, who we were really excited about as a freshman last year, was banged up coming into this season. Good to see him looking healthier and healthier and really effective. And then Salisa, freshman, anytime you can get a freshman coming in where you're going to get a few years of them, if they're already contributing right away like Solis is, I think that's really exciting as well. So yet another game this week where the pitching staff showed you some really encouraging things.
This one made me wish I had one more day in Houston and had the time to make it a doubleheader on campus and hit up this game after the Kansas game. Really dominant Cougar win. Antoine John, like you guys said, 11 strikeouts would have been a good day's work. 11 strikeouts in 5 1/3 innings is pretty damn impressive. And it's funny, if you go inning by inning, Jean never had a 1-2-3 inning, but other than maybe like 2 on with 2 outs in the 5th, and when he handed the ball off to Paul Schmitz in the 6th, like he never really was in that much trouble. And even the 6th inning, I mean, 1st and 2nd with 1 out, I mean, it's a little trouble, but it's not the kind of thing that's impossible to escape from. And I thought the Cougs did a lot of stuff really well at the plate, but drawing 7 walks as a team, always going to make it a lot easier when always going to be something that stands out to you. And Death Taxes and Justin Murray being absolutely on fire at the plate, guys. 3 for 4 with 2 ribbies in this one. And also want to shout out Jacob Shane Vogel getting his first homer of the season against the Baylor program he used to play for.
All right, and then Sunday, a bit of a pitcher's duel. No runs until the 5th when Alex Lopez rips a double down the line. Baylor answers with 1 in the top half of the 6th. UH comes out right away to regain the lead on a 2-run shot. The Bears put up 1 in the 8th. Justin Murray comes into the game into the 9th, shuts down the Bears, and the Cougs sweep their first Big 12 series. I think the thing that has me most excited is this team is winning however it needs to. You can see games where they're going in and they're shutting people down. They're winning low-scoring games. They're winning shootouts. The pitching staff is better than I think we may have thought that it was going to be. And again, Sam, to your point, this isn't the best Big 12 team or the best Baylor team that we're going to see in the Big 12, but you saw some different things from the staff that the staff and this lineup that is going to get you really, really excited about this team going forward. And that was kind of my overall thought on the weekend, was just simply the team won how it needed to. It scraped by on Sunday in a pitcher's duel. Saturday, it shut someone out, and then it slugged its way to a win on Friday.
Yeah, and it kind of goes against general college baseball tendency, guys, that the Sunday game was I think you correctly diagnosed it, Bobby, the pitcher's duel or the low-scoring one in the series. I think it does speak to a deeper, more effective Cougar pitching staff. How deep and how effective, I think, still kind of figuring that out, but I'd say deeper and more effective than the last couple seasons. Duncan Howard continuing to be a zone pounding machine, like 0 walks through 18 2/3 innings is crazy, guys. And win a season long 6 innings against Baylor, only allowing 1 run laid off an Enzo Apodaca RBI triple in that last inning of work. Credit to Howard for also straining Apodaca to finish that outing. Chris Stewart, strong inning of relief, gets into a bit of trouble in the 8th inning. Really nicely and effectively relieved by Ryan Dollar and Michael Benzor. I wanted to highlight Benzor's outing because you cannot have a more efficient outing possible. 1 pitch, 1 ground out, and that ground out was the 3rd out that you really needed to kind of get out of Baylor's really last gasp at taking over this game. I thought that was really cool. And for the second game in a row, also the Cougar pitchers did a much better job than their opponent at free passes. A season-long trend so far that I think we're all very much enjoying, and to do that as part of a conference sweep, I think just cherry on top of a really fantastic weekend.
I thought it was kind of funny that Friday and Sunday paralleled each other a little bit, and then they kind of started out with not much offense, and then in the middle innings everyone was going back and forth, and then the last innings like not a whole lot again. On Friday it was Baylor's 1 run early. On Sunday, it was Baylor's 1 run late. Otherwise, everything was just like the little back score in the middle innings. So kind of a funny little parallel there. But yeah, like you mentioned, another strong start by Duncan Howard, who, a couple weeks ago, after a rough start against St. John's, we were pretty openly going like, well, they don't have a 3rd starter yet. But, he looked better against Louisiana Lafayette last weekend, looked really good in this one. It's kind of paid off the coaching staff's confidence in him to be the Sunday starter since the beginning of the season. And, more broadly, as we talked about all 4 games this past week, really strong pitching performances by the Cougs. I don't want to get too far over my skis because it's only, 4 games in 1 week, but, we razzed Todd Whitting a little bit, like right before, as the season was starting, for saying what felt for like the 4th year in a row that this is like the deepest pitching staff he's ever had. I really hope this is the week that kind of turns the tide and really gets his pitching staff performing at the level that he was talking about and makes the Sean Kenny hire look like a really good one, because that was a really impressive performance from the Cougs on the mound. Up until this point, 16 different pitchers have thrown at least 3 innings this year for Houston, they've only played 15 games. They've had 16 different guys throw at least 3 innings, which is pretty remarkable, but it feels like they're kind of starting to develop a good sense of who their top guys are. We had two guys, Kyle Calametto and Paul Schmitz, who, they were the two returning strictly pitchers who I was the most excited about heading into the year. Turned out they were both hurt, but they're both starting to really round into form and look good. So yeah, man, don't want to overreact to 1 week where you played 4 games against teams that are probably only pretty good. But yeah, this week has me cautiously optimistic about the pitching staff. And kind of like I said, I already really like the lineup.
Yeah, so got the Big 12 sweep, and this week there's no midweek game because you are headed to Provo, Utah to take on the BYU Cougars, and that series actually starts on a Thursday because BYU can't play on a Sunday. So they do have a midweek game, BYU does, but which would make sense because they're used to playing Thursday, Friday, Saturday. But the Cougs seem to have elected to not have a midweek game this week since they are traveling for that series on Thursday, Friday, Saturday. And kind of going through BYU, it doesn't really jump off the page at you, anything they've done. They're not awful. They're not good. They're just thoroughly there. They kind of exist. A win versus us would be their best win based on RPI of the season, and it's not really that close. So this is a series that I'd really like to see the Cougs come away with 2 of 3. I never really like asking for a sweep because baseball's a fickle, weird game, but 2 of 3 is something, if you want to be a tournament team, you definitely need to do this week. What do you guys think?
Yeah, they've only played 3 games at home this year, which I thought, I mean, I guess it makes sense. Northern Utah, late February, early March, still not exactly ideal baseball one. They swept Gonzaga, who's had good teams historically, but doesn't look to be especially good this year. I think did respectably in there. Really, one of the longest road trips that any Big 12, I guess until the Arizona schools join next year, that a Big 12 school could possibly take, and took 1 of 3 and were competitive and was ultimately a 2-0 loss in the deciding game last week. So they did respectably there. I mean, what stood out to me is that they have 2 really strong hitters, and they're both freshmen, Kuio Aloy and Easton Jones. I mean, coming to the week, they've both played in every BYU game. I believe they've collectively have started all but one. I think like Jones didn't start one game, or Aloy, one of the two. Combined for 7 home runs, both hitting well above 300. I mean, if you want to pick nits, looking at both of them, Jones is striking out a lot, but I mean, hard to critique that much about their early resume against Division I competition, adjusting from the high school level. This just jumped out at me. Going to be a massive contrast in how aggressive these teams are in the base paths. BYU has 4 stolen bases, guys, through 14 games. The Cougs have 37 through 15. 4 different U of H players have at least as many stolen bases, if not more, than the entire BYU team. These teams have both hit for pretty good power in the early season. BYU's weekend rotation has been buoyed by 2 guys, Bryce Robeson and Ben Hansen, but they really haven't found a third effective guy so far this season, though they do have a number of quality bullpen arms, or at least guys with strong early season numbers. And this isn't just U of H's first trip away from Houston, or Texas guys. It's their first trip away from Houston, and Provo's just under a mile high. So suffice to say, the ball is going to fly a bit more there than the muggy sea level confines that we know and love in Houston. Guys, my last thought on this, and I promise you this is the last surprise game I'm going to have you guys playing this one. I'm going to list off 4 names, and this game is called Spot the Fake BYU Player Name. Pretty simple concept. Are you guys ready for this one?
I guess. Let's go.
Yeah. One of these is, Dustin one of these is even a free space. Like you'll hear, and you'll be like, oh, okay. A, Bryker Herdsman. B, Hunter Kent. C, Boston Mabius. D, Chipper Beck.
We're trying to find the fake one.
Which one of those is the fake one?
Dustin,
what was the second name again?
Hunter Kent.
Hunter Kent. I think I'm going to go with Hunter. I think the Herdsman one is the one that's the free space, because U of H had a Herdsman pitcher.
I'll get that one. Yeah. That's Brayson Herdsman's younger brother, Bryker.
So I'm going to go with Hunter Kent.
Bobby. I'm going to go with A, Which one was that again?
A was the herdsman one that we know.
A's Bryco
Oh, yeah.
Herdsman. I'll just get that.
Never
That's a real
yeah,
guy.
my
He's the
bad,
younger
my
brother
bad.
of a former Cougar.
Then C.
Hunter Kent was right. That's Jeff Kent's younger son who actually played for BYU like 5 or 6 years ago.
See, I was like, that's got to be Jeff
you.
Kent's son.
I
was.
I thought it would through the normal name, like, oh, that's not funny enough to be the fake one. I just wanted to list off some weird baseball player names. That's my last thought on this. Dustin, what do you think about the Cougs with the U?
I mean, I'm excited for Houston to get to go play in one of probably it's the most beautiful backdrop for
it's incredible.
It's that or Pepperdine, like over the Pacific, or UCSB or one of those.
Sure. But yeah, I mean, BYU is picked tied for last in the Big 12 preseason poll, and I don't think that they've done a whole lot to dispel that notion, going 7-7 to this point against, a schedule with some decent teams. But I mean, like, they opened up their season with a win over USC, which looked like something good. USC has been awful. Got the sweep over Gonzaga. Gonzaga's been awful. So not a whole lot that really jumps out at you. And you mentioned the two good freshman hitters. Outside of those two guys, though, they really don't hit well as a team. They're hitting just 252, despite that, not really overwhelming strength of schedule that they faced. And, after the like we just talked a lot about, the really strong week for Houston pitching wise, definitely hope to see them really shut down the Cougs with a U this weekend up in Provo. And really, to the extent that they are having any success offensively, it's been through free base runners. Between walks and hit batters, they're averaging over 5.6 free base runners per game. That's kind of their bread and butter because they're not hitting real well. So we've seen this Houston team pitch to the strike zone a lot this year. We've seen them pitch extremely successfully, especially this past weekend. So we're hoping to see those things continue, and hopefully, if we're only giving BYU, maybe 3-ish free base runners a game, then I think we're going to see their offense really struggle to score runs, and hopefully that means that the Cougs with 2 O's will be putting up enough runs to get at least a couple of wins this weekend.
Absolutely, it's like I said, a game that I want to see 2 out of 3. If you don't give BYU those free base runners, and to your point, Sam, the stadium's about a mile high, so things that are a fly out in Cougar Field are home runs there, and you can the classic bloop and a shot that's much more likely to happen in a place like BYU. So, how do y'all feel about moving on to arguably the biggest win of the weekend?
Love it.
All right, let's talk softball, gentlemen. So, I would say of this weekend, we said that there was a lot of awesome stuff that happened this weekend. I'd argue that Friday night was the biggest win of the weekend. And yes, I'm including the Kansas basketball game in that. The Lady Cougars softball team did something only one other team has done one time this year, and that is beat the Texas Longhorns in softball. Just an incredible win. But let's go over the game, kind of talk about it. The game was an absolute wild game. If you watched any of this, your head was spinning the whole time. Coogs took a 4-run lead in the first, just put up 4 behind 3 home runs. But Texas, being the number 1 team in the country, didn't stay down very long. They answered with 5 in the third, 2 in the fourth. So at this point, it's 7-4. 7-4. And you kind of felt like, well, it was fun to lead Texas there for a little bit. But it's time for y'all to kind of do that thing that number 1 teams in the country do. And the Cougs came out in the fourth and put up 8 runs on the Horns to take a 12-7 lead. Texas comes out, scores 3 in the sixth. You start to get a little concerned again. What's it going to look like in the seventh? Cougs hold on to the lead and win 12-10 over the number 1 ranked Longhorns. And I sent you guys a text that we were atop the Big 12 standings. Texas was in last. Life was good, gentlemen. And my thought watching the game Friday was, one, just how excited I was to watch this team compete like that. To get a win, it's their best win in program history, their highest rank. If you don't believe that I support our softball team and have through and through, I have a signed picture of the very first softball team that we ever had right over my left shoulder, right over here. Super exciting. I've been to many softball games. It was just exciting to see that program get that win, but it was a perfect microcosm of this season. Pitching, you didn't exactly know what you were going to get, and you were just going to slug your way to a win, and you're just going to put up a ton of runs and hope the other team doesn't put up as many as you. And while that seems like that's what happens in every bat and ball sport, you don't see 12 runs put up in a softball game very often, especially against the number one team in the country. So super exciting win there. One of the biggest wins in program history. I don't want to say it is the biggest because of
Biggest
some of the
regular
regionals.
season.
Yeah, biggest regular season, but some of the regionals, conference championship games like that, I would say were bigger. But this right here is just one of those moments that you, even if you're not watching the game from the start, you're going, you're texting your friends who are big U of H fans like us, going, we're beating Texas. Put on ESPN Plus right now. So, what was it like for you guys to watch it?
Yeah, I mean, phenomenal moment for your first ever Big 12 game to be your first ever win over a top ranked team is pretty special. And just, the way it went, where you got out to the big lead and then all of a sudden you're down 7-4. And I think, we can admit in the group chat, we were all talking about it. Well, it was nice that we had it for a little while there. I think I even tweeted water finds its level. Like, okay, yeah, we're gonna go ahead and lose to the number one team, and they're gonna show us why they're the number one team. But yeah, I mean, you're getting that rally in the bottom of the fourth, getting 4 runs via a walk, 2 hit by pitches, 2 errors, and a single makes it 8-7. You're like, okay, it's 8-7. Like, we're back in it. And then when Jasmine Rollin hit her second home run of the game, that emphatic 3-run jack to make it
Just
11.
a rope.
Yeah, all of a sudden it's not like, oh, we're back in this game. It's like, oh, we might actually win this damn thing. We have a significant lead fairly late in the game, and then getting enough outs. Paris Lehman coming in. Was able to get some outs right away and then started to struggle. They went to Shelby Smith and then went back to Lehman towards the end of the game. For her to get that 1-2-3 7th inning when it was 2 runs going into the 7th, and the Longhorns have shown such an ability. In literally half of the innings they've had, they've scored at least 2 runs. So it did not feel like a safe lead going into the 7th, but she got the 1-2-3 7th, including the last batter of the game, catching Bella Dayton looking for the final out. Houston's only strikeout for their pitching staff in the entire game was the strikeout looking for the very last batter of the game. So just a phenomenal result, you can't say enough about what this lineup did against the pitching staff that has just been elite this year and is not giving up runs to anybody. To put up a 12 spot in 6 innings, because you didn't even bat in the bottom of the 7th.
Yeah.
Against that pitching staff is just absolutely unbelievable, and just super proud of this program for picking up that win in a sold out stadium and really giving their fans and giving the sport of college softball, I think I would say, one of the games of the year that the sport of college softball is going to see.
Yeah, because I think for all the great stuff about softball, it can be a very top heavy sport. Like upsets like this, not that they're unheard of, not that they never happen, but I would say, fair to say, guys, like not super common that you see. Like when you see an opponent like UT or Oklahoma, like they're generally, if they're losing a game, it's generally to another team that's roughly in that same station. And really cool. Anytime you get a win like this, obviously it's a team effort, but really wanted to single out Jasmine Rollin. Hitting 2 homers against this opponent is an all-timer performance. And we kind of knew from the moment she signed with U of H that she was going to be one of the very best hitters in this team, just from her past college resume at Arizona State and Mizzou previously. And that's the advantage kind of bringing a transfer player like Rollin, who's played at a high level softball, leagues, I guess, with the SEC and the Pac-12, that this wasn't her first time facing an elite opponent, because she's seen teams of roughly that similar profile and conference play as the Horns. And I think you have to expand as a team the mental toughness of this group to fight back from down 7-4, which you guys kind of allude to. Maybe a trio of UH podcasts at that point kind of to themselves were like, it was great that we, fought here, but it looks like they've kind of taken over this game. And this wasn't simply U of H getting a massive early lead and clinging on for dear life. Not that I would have been any less stoked about this.
Would have been okay with that.
With that as well. But the Cougs had to answer. The Cougs had to get up from the mat and answer that deficit from their early lead against one of the very, very best teams in the country. I mean, it's hard to choose a favorite thing about this one because there are so many things you could pick and be 100% correct to pick. But I think for me personally, it was the fact that Cougs won this game, I think in large part by doing something like fielding better than your opponent. The final margin was narrow enough that if the Cougs had multiple errors like the Horns, pretty decent chance, guys, we're talking about a close but no cigar Cougar loss. That this team fielded at a higher level than a high-level opponent hasn't always been the case for the past few seasons. This team has kind of struggled to consistently win conference games. I'd like to think this is something they could hold on to in the more winnable series against opponents who aren't just absolutely stacked like the Longhorns, that you didn't just win this game by capturing lightning in a bottle. You won it by playing fundamental softball better than one of the very, very best teams, say it for the umpteenth time in the country.
Yeah, just an incredible result. And moved on to Saturday. Saturday felt a little bit like what we kind of expected this series to look like. The Horns put up 5 in the first, never really looked back. Cougars never really threatened them. Had scored a couple of runs, kind of sprinkled throughout. Ended up losing the game 9-2. And again, this kind of felt more like what we expected this series to look like going in. So, any thoughts on Saturday, gentlemen?
No, just, I mean, I guess just that for that being the one game of the weekend that got away from them against the number 1 team in the country, they still didn't get run ruled. They still scored they didn't get shut out. So if you play a team that good and your worst game in a three game weekend is 9-2, that is pretty impressive on its own, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
And I was gonna say, like, just, I'm not gonna say it was a lot closer than you'd think, but like, the Cougs get off, maybe the Cougs have a better pitching start in this one, because a lot of the Longhorn runs were scored early in this. Like, maybe if you have one more, honestly, Division I caliber pitcher, like, maybe that one's more of a 4-2, 5-2 game, and it's something more similar to what you're about to talk about, Bobby, with the Sunday game. That's my only additional thought about Saturday.
Yeah, and Sunday gave us another exciting game with the Cougs having a chance to win late. Fellas, we headed into the 7th, and this was a 1-inning game. It was tied up heading into the 7th, and it was your best inning versus our best inning. And sadly, the Cougs scored 2 to win the game 8-6. Cougs had a chance in the bottom of the 7th, just got a runner on and just couldn't finish it. So gotta say, great weekend for the Cougs. Despite losing 2 of 3, it was big to win 1 and then to play a second really, really close. This really kind of gives a little bit more hope for the softball team than I would imagine we had going into the season, going into this series.
It's going into the bottom of the 6th in that Sunday game. Houston was trailing 6-2, and it was kind of the same thing. You're trailing by 4 late against a good team. This one's probably over. I mean, and it wasn't. Houston strung a bunch of hits together, scored 4 runs in the 6th to tie it out before, like you mentioned, the Longhorns got 2 in the top of the 7th to win it after the Cougs weren't able to match them. But yeah, I mean, we said in the preview that even winning a single game would be a major accomplishment. So doing that and then having another game come down to the final inning, obviously you'd have loved to find a way to steal the game and win the series, but still just a weekend that we're over the moon with for Houston softball for sure.
Yeah, we watched that one. We watched the end of it at your place, Dustin. We were talking to ourselves in real time. It's just like, we have the tying runner at the plate here. Like, I know I'm not like, oh, we're about to win this game, but it's just like, we didn't think this. I think we were just like, let's just not get run ruled this weekend. That, guys, that was my expectation.
Way accomplished it.
And I've been, I think, somewhat negative about softball. I don't even think I've been entirely wrong to be somewhat negative at times about softball, but I promise you, even if we gotten swept, I wouldn't have been negative. So, like, taking one and having one be close enough the Cougs could have conceivably got back in and won it, like, that's major. Like, not many teams are going to do that this year. Like, the number is going to be very small. It's maybe Oklahoma and Oklahoma State in conference play, maybe Baylor. Like, that's it. Like, I don't think anyone expected outside of maybe the U of H locker room and coaching staff for this series to be as close as it was. And that's really cool. And like you said, Bob, I think gives you hope for, not to steal your segue here, but might be a bit more of a manageable series this coming weekend.
I was going to say a couple more big picture thoughts for the weekend. Houston scored 20 runs this weekend against a team that had given up 21 runs total on the season coming in. Over 19 games, Houston came 1 run short of matching that in 3 games. And then in the circle, Shelby Smith and Paris Lehman. I don't think we expected either of them to throw a complete game shutout against a team this good, and neither of them did, but both of them got you some big innings, got you some big outs, showed some good things against one of the top lineups in the country. Something that, kind of like you said, you'd like to think that they can build on as you face some of the teams in the middle and lower tiers of the Big 12. But yeah, just exciting weekend and really interesting going forward after you face, the number 1 team in the country. Your next 3 weekends are against the teams that were picked 7th, 8th, and 9th in the Big 12 preseason poll, and Houston was picked 10th dead last. So definitely the definition of kind of some more winnable series where all of a sudden your goal shifts very quickly from, hey, we'd love to maybe have a chance to even be in one of these games, to like, hey, let's actually win some series and show that, and actually start building a really impressive overall Big 12 campaign.
Yeah. just super excited for this weekend. The Cougars are headed to Ames for a weekend slate versus the Iowa State Cyclones. A fun thing I kind of noticed while I was doing research on this series is Iowa State does not have a home game that they've played yet. I understand that they are in Iowa, so early season, but I thought they would have played one by now. But they have not. They're the only Big 12 team with no home game yet. Kansas is second fewest with one home game, which feels kind of weird. Iowa State RPI 108, 9-13 on the year. Certainly a series you, after that performance versus the Horns, you really want to take 2 or 3 against this weekend. That's kind of what I would like to see. That would be a big accomplishment for this team. Winning 1 out of the 3. If you're going to make the tournament, you kind of want to win 2 here.
Yeah, kind of like I said with BYU when we were talking baseball, this is the team that was picked second to last in the Big 12 and hasn't done a lot to dispel that notion thus far this year. 9-13, like you mentioned, although to be in their defense, that's 22 games that they've played away from home up until this point. They do have some dangerous hitters. Angelina Allen is hitting 500 on the year, 39 for 78. With 9 doubles and 8 homers, pretty remarkable. Malaysia Ochoa as well, hitting 377 with an on-base percentage of over 500. So if you got 2 hitters that are getting on over half of the time, that's pretty good. But man, have they had a rough go of it pitching-wise. Of the 6 pitchers who have thrown for them this year, only one of them has an ERA lower than 5.37, and she hasn't pitched in nearly a month. Opponents as a whole hitting 325 against the Cyclones on the year. We just watched Houston score 20 runs against an elite pitching staff over the course of the weekend. You would hope and expect that they're going to score runs in bunches in Ames this weekend.
Yeah, I think the only thing that worries me is that the Cyclones do have some really good hitters in their lineup. None more so than Angelina Allen, who's hitting over 500 with 8 homers and 26, or hitting 500, excuse me, with 8 homers and 26 ribbies. Absurd numbers now that we're this late into the season. Malaysia Ochoa and Olivia Wardlow are also having really strong seasons as well. And I think don't have to pretend that U of H has answered all of its pitching questions. But yeah, like you said, Dustin, woof, that pitching staff has not been good.
Yeah, and that is the Cougar softball week ahead. And looking back, we want to talk about track heading to an NCAA championship. The indoor championship event took place in Boston, I believe. And just some quick standouts for the Cougs. The women's 4x4 takes third. So third place, third in the nation. If you can do that in any sport, in any activity, we are going to celebrate that here. And then Grant Levesque set the collegiate pole vault record by a heptathlete. Sorry, that's really hard to say.
Nailed it.
The highest anyone in the heptathlon has ever pole vaulted. I think that's pretty cool. Something that you don't see every day. That's why he has done the highest, and that's why it's the most impressive thing that I saw. What stood out to you guys at the indoor national championships?
Happy for the women's 4x4 relay, who, really kind of came out of nowhere to win the Big 12 title and then kept that going with a 3rd place finish. But I think overall, you have to be disappointed because we talked about in the preview, Houston having 7 entrants, 5 on the men's side, 2 on the women's side. And we really thought 7 out of 7 had a chance. Not that all 7 of them were going to, but each of the 7 individually, we thought he had a good chance to score points, finish in the top 8. Only 2 of them did. It was the women's 4x4 relay and then Devion Wilson finishing 4th in the 60 hurdles. So that was a little bit of a bummer. Levesque, top, like you said, mentioned the highest pole vault clearance as a heptathlete in NCAA history, also won the 60 hurdles among the heptathletes, but then just didn't get enough from his other 3 events to get in the points. Sean Maswangani, Christian Sampe, Kellyanne Beckford all also finished their fantastic indoor seasons. Unfortunately, just kind of a bit shy of where they probably would have liked it at NCAAs.
I think the only thing I would add, Davion Wilson just missing the podium in the 60 hurdles. I know he's been up there, but never going to be upset with a 4th place in the nation finish. And just the way Wilson has progressed year on year in this specific event in the indoors has been really impressive. And yeah, want to be on the podium, but fourth among all people who compete in this event at the highest level of collegiate track is really impressive. We'll give Davion Wilson his flowers at the end of a fantastic indoor season. I'm sure plenty of stuff to come positively for him in the outdoor season as well in the hurdles.
Gonna throw in a quick 5-second shout out while we're doing Olympic sports. Henrietta Fongley becomes the first swimmer under Coach Shanika
Hey,
Jameson to
nice.
qualify for NCAA championships. We did have a diver a couple of years ago. Diving zones are still going on, so hopefully she'll have some another Cougar teammate joining her for NCAA championships.
Vamp for like 10 seconds, Dustin, because I believe I just saw something come in about a diver qualifying.
Yeah, so I was gonna mention that was something we saw semi-regularly towards the end of Wakamarka's career, was getting people qualified, and that's kind of the one thing that that Jameson hasn't really matched him as well. So getting Fongley, who has eligibility left to qualify for NCAA championships, when you also have a lot of swimmers this year who had B cuts, who were like freshmen and sophomores, I think bodes real well that we're gonna not only see this team, be a Big 12 contender, but get some athletes potentially to NCAAs as well.
And just earlier today here on Tuesday, Chase Ferris actually qualified for NCAAs in the 3-meter diving zones as well. So
let's go.
Sending a swimmer and a diver. So that's pretty cool.
That's
Thank
awesome.
you for vamping, Dustin. Appreciate it.
And just real quick, back on track, getting third and third in the 4x4 and maybe a little bit of our disappointment with some of the results and everything. Just think if our football team was ranked 4th. We'd be losing our minds if our football team was ranked 4th. We just had somebody finish 4th in the country in something. That's pretty impressive. That's really, really exciting. And we are going to wrap up on a kind of negative note. We've
been very positive this episode, I feel like.
Yes, we have been. But in the last week, Cougar women's basketball has played in their Big 12 tournament game versus Texas Tech and lost by 14. And a 14-point loss to a team on a 9-game losing streak just is not great. And look, with where this team played all year, I know that losing isn't the like I wasn't disappointed that we lost it. I was disappointed that we lost by 14. Right? You lose by 14, and then Tech goes on and loses by less to Baylor. Tech is closer to Baylor than we are to Tech. And Tech isn't this world-killing basketball team. It's just sad to see where the program is. And what's more concerning than that is some of the statements that Huey made after the game. Coach Huey said we had a good season this year, guys.
Great season.
Great season. I'm sorry. I gave him some credit there. He said we had a great season. Guys, you guys put out a tweet. I'm not sure which one of you did it. That just listed what a great season this was. And it's just, what did y'all make of those comments?
I'll let you start, Dustin. Yeah.
I mean, it was ridiculous. And you talk about losing to Tech. Tech in the Big 12 regular season and conference tournament went 3-14 against teams not named Houston. They beat us 3 times. 2 of them were blowouts. The one that was at home was still like,
honestly borderline blowout given how much it
wasn't. Even that one wasn't close at the end. And
it was a boat racing.
Yeah, and it was. I mean, we not only did we see this team utterly unprepared to play the teams that were already in the Big 12 for the most part. Like we lost. At least we were comfortably better than Cincinnati and UCF, and we were kind of blowing them out last year. They gained ground on us, and we didn't. We went 5-14 between the regular season and the Big 12 and the Big 12 tournament, and finished essentially. What if we hadn't had that crazy 2 threes at the last second to beat UCF, we would have finished dead fucking last in the Big 12 with a veteran team. Like, it's not like Coach Huey had a young team and he was trying to build towards 2 to 3 years down the line. This was a really veteran team. This was a roster that was constructed by a head coach was trying to win immediately in the Big 12, and he was an inch from being dead last, and then just went out with an absolute whimper in the Big 12 tournament. It's just the fact that he has had a decade now to run this program. And Sam, I asked you in our last episode, I said, a week from now, do you think Ron Huey's going to still be the head coach? And you said no. And I was like, I got all confident. I was like, yeah,
I said yes.
You said he would. Yes, you will. Sorry, I got those backwards. You said yes, he would be. I was thinking I'd reverse the question about him getting fired. No, you said that he would still have his job. I said, I got real confident and said, no, it's a decade of nothing, a decade of 0 NCAA tournament appearances. And then you absolutely were not ready for Big 12 play. And then you're going around saying dumb shit like, oh, it's 10 times harder than I thought it was going to be. And I think we had a great season. Like, the fact
How did you not know it was going to be hard?
The fact that he still has his job at this point and presumably will still have his job going into the next season is just a clear sign from Chris Pesman that he doesn't give a shit about women's basketball. He doesn't care if we win women's basketball games or not. As long as we're filling TDECU to watch the football team play, as long as we're filling the Fertitta Center to watch the men's basketball team play. Apparently, he doesn't give a shit. You don't have to do anything for a decade. You can do nothing for a decade and keep your job for a year 11. That's insulting to everyone who actually wants to see this women's basketball team do well.
And, this game was such a bummer of a way for the college careers, presumably, or at least the U of H careers of athletes like Layla Blair and Britt Onyeje to potentially end on. Because, guys, I remember vividly the 2020-21 season opener against Oklahoma, Big 12 program, past and present, not future, but past and present, where the Cougs went on the road and beat a Big 12 team with those two players, each of them in their first year in the program, playing a big role in that win. 4 years later, guys, where are we? We're talking about a blowout loss to a Tech team that's certainly no better than the Oklahoma team that we beat 4 years ago. And asking the questions of where we go from here, because I haven't seen any evidence that anyone in the program or in positions to hold the program accountable think there's a problem here. And I think my expectation for this season, I would say it was probably y'all's as well, wasn't that U of H should be up with Baylor or K-State or Iowa State and the Horns and those kinds of teams. But this team was a hair's breadth so close, like you said, Dustin, a 1-point home win over the eventual dead last team, UCF, from being DFL, and promptly exited Big 12 play by being thoroughly beaten by a team on a 9-game losing streak for the third time this year. If you want to compare U of H to the other incoming AAC programs, since he had a bad season last year in the AAC, you know what they did, guys? Novel thought here. They made a change. They hired a successful alum, Katrina Merriweather, and the Bearcats had an identical conference record to U of H in year one under Merriweather. But again, easier to stomach that when it's year one. You're building towards something here, potentially long term. Even UCF, the team that finished with an admittedly worse record than the Cougars, undeniably were more competitive against the better teams in this league, and they're only in their second season, under head coach C.D. Messer. If this was U of H in its second year under Ron Huey, I mean, we wouldn't be stoked to talk about being 5-13 in Big 12 play, but I think we'd know there's no way U of H is going to make a change here after 2 years. But year 10, a decade, and we've had people tell us, they believe that U of H just won't make any changes until there's a full Big 12 revenue share. And I'm not necessarily doubting or believing, the veracity of that. I mean, we're sitting here almost a week later and no change has been made, but I just can't fathom, just as an organizational rule, not even athletics, being like, well, we can't fire anyone, because that's such an insane way to run an organization, much less one as results driven as sports. I mean, these aren't confirmed numbers, but our, in real life friend and podcast graphic designer, Bill, did some cursory research. It would probably cost somewhere in the ballpark of $200,000 for U of H to make a change here. If it's not worth U of H's time to make a leadership change in an underperforming program, guys, I don't know. It might not be worth my time to talk about the sport here. And guys, this is my last point. Are you both familiar with the general concept of opportunity cost?
Yes.
Yeah. Economic concept. You don't know at home. Economic concept comes up in a lot of intro econ classes, though not exclusively an econ concept. Basically, it's the loss of potential gain from an alternative to the choice that you actually made. Guys, in this sport, the opportunity cost here for keeping Ron Huey is the fact that we keep seeing good coaches in our footprint, move on to better programs after showing themselves to be significantly better at their jobs than Ron Huey. I think obvious recent examples, Mark Kellogg, who was a super successful coach at Stephen F. Austin, previously D2 and JUCO level before that, who's now the head coach of West Virginia, a team who demolished U of H the one time those teams met this season. And I would say the next guy who could be the one U of H is most in danger of missing the chance to hire is North Texas's Jason Burton. In his first year in the AAC from Conference USA, UNT won the conference regular season title after being picked, I think, 10th or 11th in the preseason. Burton was also a successful D2 coach at A&M Commerce, led them to a winning conference record his first year transitioning up at A&M Commerce as well. I mean, I'm not saying Jason Burton is such a can't miss hire, but he's a young Texan coach who's won at places that aren't easy to win. And I think U of H's opportunity cost here is that perhaps by next year, Jason Burton's had another good season. He's the target of an athletic department that actually gives a shit about women's basketball. And there's, like you said, Dustin, not to end on a bummer, no evidence available that's the case here.
Woo, yeah. Bobby, you haven't really jumped in. Do you have any feelings on that?
Guys, I have spent so much time at Hofheinz Pavilion watching our women's basketball team.
You voluntarily went and watched our women's basketball team just a few weeks ago.
Yeah, I drove the 40 minutes to TCU to watch the game. I paid for a ticket. You're not going to find somebody who wants to see this basketball program succeed more than me, other than a family member of a player, right? Or of our coaching staff. I want to see this program succeed. I lived in Waco. I go to women's basketball games. Like when I was in college, I'd go home for Christmas break and I'd go to Baylor games. And it's sad to see the state of this program and the fact that nothing is happening. And I said this once on the podcast before, and I'll say it again. If we're not going to move on, just shut down the women's basketball program. Just shut it down. There's no point. And if you're going to tell me that it's a Title IX reason, you have to have it for scholarship reasons to make sure everything matches up, then here's the thing. Give me a sport I've never seen before. I'd rather start a rowing team. You want to do gymnastics, do gymnastics. You want to do shooting sports, I don't care. At this point, give me something new to talk about. But this is just an absolute embarrassment. The fact that this program is continuing to go forward with where we currently stand, and it's going to cost $200,000 to move on from the coach, and they're just not going to do it. That's part of the reason why you want to join the Big 12, is so that you can pay better coaches more money. And when you get into a situation where you can't pay the coach or your coach needs to be moved on from, you are able to fire the coach, pay the buyout, and pay for a new guy. Somebody from the account tweeted it out that like we spent all these years acting like we were a P5 program. We spent all this time acting and spending money like we're a P5 program, and we're just going after it, and we're spending money hand over fist. And now we're a P5 program. And now we don't want to spend any money. Now we don't want to do anything. We don't want to let a coach go who's underperforming. It's clear we don't care about, like you guys said, filling up TDECU and filling up Fertitta Center for the men's program. But here's the thing. The women's program gets to recruit to the same facilities that the men's program does. It's not even like they're at a disadvantage. They have the Jordan brand. How many women's basketball teams have the Jordan brand? They have that beautiful basketball facility. Why can Samson do it and Huey can't? It's the same advantages.
Yeah, I would say the basketball program, the men's program is funded better. That's one thing I will say.
Yeah.
But your general point is right, that you still have good peripherals. Like even if your line item budget might be a bit smaller than like Cincinnati's or something like that, just throwing that out there as an example, like there are still other perks to the UH women's program. Like, yeah.
You have one of the best facilities for women's basketball in the conference, right? Because we have one of the best basketball facilities in the conference. We've spent so much money investing into the men. And to your point, Sam, that they have the budget. The men have more of a budget. That happens with a lot of sports. I'm sure basketball has more of a budget than volleyball does. But volleyball's making tournaments. Volleyball's making Sweet 16s. And not to compare all of our women's sports to our best women's sport that we have, but like softball is showing some kind of improvement. The other women's sports, women's golf is a top 40 team. We're not talking about them on this episode, but they're a top 40 team.
Swimming have continually good.
Yeah. We're qualifying people for nationals. It's just, those aren't funded well either. They're not funded as well as men's basketball or football or hell, even baseball. But they're able to do it, and somehow our women's basketball program can't, and we refuse to do anything about it. And it's just sad. It's not anything but sad. It's just the program, the athletic department deserves more than what we're getting out of that team.
Yeah, keeping a guy for another year after 10 years of no tournaments is unacceptable. And if you can't do it because you can't buy him out, then giving him a contract that runs through year 11 is unacceptable. So either way, just failure of leadership as regards to the women's basketball program. We are going to cut it off real abruptly here because I know one of our hosts needs to get out of here real quick. So without the usual outro, I will just say, as always,
go Coogs.